Debbie also inspires me because she too has a devotion to both being a light for and a shining light on extraordinary, ordinary women and men. Debbie works tirelessly so that the best information is there for what we probably call our normal journeys that she sees as heroes' journeys. Debbie has a national audience that reads her blogs and her book. Today you will hear what it takes to be a hero, and you will learn that you too are a hero. Debbie Augentahaler.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kiki. Well, thank you for including me in this wonderful evening, honoring so many wonderful people. Congratulations to all the award winners, and thank you for all you do to make the world a better place. I'm so honored to share this evening with all of you and to celebrate women who have accomplished so much here in Vermont, and to celebrate women everywhere for the meaningful contributions they've made in the world throughout history. Kiki, I'd like to celebrate you as well, and everyone involved Rutland, for what you have done to be an advocate and support for women. As you have said, success will be evident when Evolve can change from a focus on women's issues only to problem solving for human issues. I couldn't agree more. Just last week, I gave a workshop for clinicians on grief, loss, and trauma at the headquarters of a large organization. I went to the ladies' room, and there, taped on the inside of the stall, was a quote by Albert Einstein. It said, "Try not to become a man of success, but rather to become a man of value." And I found it funny that in a woman's bathroom, there was a quote by a man about the value of men. I wanted to take out my Sharpie and correct Albert Einstein, but I didn't want to change it to woman. I wanted to change it to person, because we all have value, regardless of gender, race, or religion. And that's the change we want to see in the world. My late husband, Jimmy, and Kiki adored each other and were best friends since meeting in college. When Jimmy and I fell in love, I knew I had to pass the Kiki test. You can't imagine how relieved I was when I did. And then, when Jimmy died unexpectedly in my arms, one early Monday morning over 20 years ago, Kiki was there by my side to share the darkest night of my life. Jimmy was only 45 and he'd been healthy and vibrant before he died. The doctors compared the probability of his death from an aortic aneurysm to being struck by lightning, and that lightning strike ended my life as I knew it and began the baptism by fire that brought me to my new future. Through the constant support of family, friends, and my therapist, I survived, though I really didn't believe I would. I was only 36, and things were different then. There was no social media and all the support groups there are now, and I didn't know any 36-year-old widows, though I met one tonight. Many people thought of me as strong. They wanted to know, how did I survive? What did I do? As if I had a magic elixir, as if by simply still standing, I could tell them the secret of surviving that which you feel you cannot. I was shocked that anyone could think me strong, especially in that first year. In my mind, what other choice did I have but to pick up the pieces, the shattered pieces of my life, and begin to weave them back together into a new one? Very few knew of the panic I felt in facing a life without my husband in it. I see now that because I was putting one foot in front of the other, I was strong. I only wish I'd known it then. I didn't have a magic elixir then, and I don't have one now, but I do know more. I came to learn that surviving great grief is part of the hero's journey. In fact, I teach a writing workshop and I lead retreats on writing your grief story based on Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. Almost all of us have had to manage grief. Whether through death or a breakup, losing a home, suffering through an illness, losing a job. Think of all the symbolic losses of women trapped in society's expectations all these many years. The loss of freedom of choice, loss of independence, having to mold oneself to fit inside a box of conformity. The list goes on. Okay, maybe it doesn't go on. The list goes on, and I could stand here all night with that list. The point is, we've all been challenged in life over and over. There should be 100 words for grief in every language. Isabel Allende said, "We don't even know how strong we are until we are forced to bring that hidden strength forward in times of tragedy, of war, of necessity." People do amazing things. The human capacity for survival and renewal is awesome. Tonight we celebrate women who have inspired us, who have persevered, who have triumphed, and because of this, give the gift of hope to others. In history, it's been left to the women to do the mourning. Women sending men off to war, down into the coal mines, racing into fires. Women pacing Widow's Walk, atop houses in seaside towns. Women waiting, too often in vain, carrying the heavy burden of grief in their hearts. In the First World War alone, there were whole towns filled with only women, dressed in black, for men who didn't come back. To show you how far women have come in the last 100 years, I'm going to read an excerpt from a poem called "The Heart of a Woman," written in 1918 by Georgia Douglas Johnson. The heart of a woman falls back with the night and enters some alien cage in its plight, and tries to forget it has dreamed of the stars while it breaks, breaks, breaks on the sheltering bars. Do you hear the grief in her words? How many courageous women work to break through those sheltering cage bars to forge a path leading to the ability for us to reach for the stars? How many women had to suffer and grieve in silence? These women created the space for dreams to come true for generations, despite adversity, despite discrimination, despite poverty and hardships. Women who managed to turn something bad into something good. We all get knocked down. And thank God, most of us eventually get back up and say, "What am I going to do about this?" And this takes courage. People don't think their everyday stories are heroic or show strength, but they're wrong. It takes strength and resilience to get through life. Especially as women, we so often underestimate ourselves or downplay the strength it takes, or like me, don't even realize it. I thought of this when Kiki told me how award winners and honorees often react with surprise when being told they are being recognized. Really? Me? Why is it that we can't see ourselves as others do? The power of grief to transform us has been known since the beginning of time. The Greeks understood this, writing about the depth of pain and trauma and grief, and the power of human emotions in Greek tragedies like Antigone, Oedipus Rex, and the Odyssey, classics that endure and captivate us to this day, some 2,500 years later. Did you know trauma is the Greek word for wound? Wounds of the heart are the very essence of what makes a powerful hero's journey. In everything we do, as we are shaped by life events and inevitable traumas, something is left behind or lost to us. Yet, the very nature of endings brings a new beginning. We grieve, we gather strength from each other, from our heroes, and from the very core of ourselves. We heal and we celebrate. It's important to grasp the life of the living and to be present to this honor and embrace it. I've come to learn a heart can expand to hold both huge grief and huge joy. Grief is universal. The experience of grief fosters compassion, wisdom, and a deeply felt interconnection with others. We can face the darkness together and light sparks of hope at a time when there may be none. We see how communities come together when tragedy strikes, like the Parkland shootings, the tornadoes in Alabama, the fires in California, and on and on. We live in tumultuous times, and hearts are breaking every second of every day. This is one of the reasons why I wrote my book, You Are Not Alone. We live in a grief-phobic society. This means we don't often talk about grief until our own world breaks apart with a huge loss. It's something that happens to other people until it happens to you. This is why it's important and healthy to talk about grief. To acknowledge it is part of life. It is part of being human. I want to open that conversation. I want to bring grief out of the shadows. I want to normalize the grieving experience. People want to avoid it, though it is inevitable. When I was in deep grief, I felt like I had a contagious disease. And in a sense I did. I had been impacted by death and my world had been blown apart. If anyone got too close to me, death and all its sorrow might rub up against them too. Some people were uncomfortable around me, couldn't look me in the eye, didn't know what to say. One of our close friends actually crossed the street when he saw me, not knowing I'd seen him. Because every time he saw me, he cried. It seems nothing teaches us about grief except grief itself. As time went on, especially after 9/11, many people asked for my help when they were grieving. And I found I could help and that I wanted to. To know something good could come from my pain was healing. St. Francis said, "It is in giving that we receive." Eventually, my whole experience led me to do the work I do today. I left the world of finance behind and followed my heart to a new career as a psychotherapist specializing in grief and trauma. My book allows me to help more people than I can one-on-one in my therapy practice. It's the book I wish I'd had when I was newly grieving, feeling hopeless, and adrift in a new world. And this has become my mission, to plant seeds of hope when someone feels hopeless. I offer guidance throughout my book to help navigate the dark waters of grief. For all of us who've been through loss and suffered grief, we are examples for others that you can not only survive, but thrive and lead a life of purpose and meaning. Many of the experiences and feelings from my story are similar to the ones I've heard repeatedly from people who are grieving. I share my story because I want grievers to know they're not alone in how they are feeling, like I did. That nothing is wrong with them, like I did. That what they are experiencing is a natural response to loss. Stories of suffering and transcendence weaves us together in a shared human experience. Hearing other people's stories of how they coped and survived gives the hope they too will survive. And now, it's not just men who go off to war, it's also women. And the grief widens. We are a grieving society, and we have a lot to grieve for. And we have this problem of how to grieve properly and openly. We need to help each other through these turbulent times. Grief can't be the elephant in the room any longer. When a roof blows off a home in a storm, the rebuilding can't happen until that storm has happened. A roof goes onto a home one shingle at a time, and it takes more than one person to put a roof onto a home. It takes a community. And as you heard tonight, I think the underlying theme is the community, 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 and what can we do as a community to help others in this world. And I loved hearing everybody talk about this, and this is like the thread that connects it all. So we are that community, and I celebrate all of you. Don't think just because you're doing something that you see as small, you're not helping. Sometimes the most meaningful things that people do for you in your time of need are the ones that have the most impact. I want all of you to know that every gesture of kindness and compassion has a ripple effect that just gains in magnitude, a wave that crosses oceans. When we seek to do good in the world, we'll never know how many people we might help, but know this, you are having an impact. And I know I'm echoing what was discussed earlier, but it's really important. And I thought I was going to say that, and I said I'm still going to say it because it's true. Tonight is about honoring all the good in the world that was born from silent cries of grief and the will to emerge from the ashes of fire baptisms and do something about it. Honoring the courageous hearts and compassionate souls of all those who are on their own hero's journey, changing the world one step at a time. Let's celebrate them, celebrate life, and celebrate the hero inside each of us.